2 trillion shillings in benefits. Only 3% was paid to survivors. That was paid to people, to beneficiaries whose parents had died. Only 3%. So if you think about checking out of this world, out of this Uganda soon, you have a 97% chance you're going to be around. So don't count on living yet. You need to plan because you're not going to go anywhere in terms of what you do. And the rest, even if you get your money, please. So the thing is, we need to save more at a personal level, and every employer must ensure that their employers save more. And I think Geoffrey did an amazing job in that. But what do we need to save? There is the personal one, and Geoffrey talked about the personal need for us to save. Let me pull you back a little bit to the national call for savings. Why do we need to save as a nation? And we're going to look at an example from Vietnam. This is Vietnam in 1986. You know what happened in 1986? Who came to power? Look at, you could actually look at this. Some of us are going to see like this. But this is Vietnam in 1986. This is Vietnam today. This last year's photos. What happened between 1986 and 2024? This is the GDP of Vietnam. If you look at 1986, 1987, they were right at $53 billion. That was the GDP of Vietnam. As you get into 2025, they're hitting $550 billion. So they've grown by 10 times. When the president of this country tells you we can grow by 10 times, he's looking at the Vietnam example. Right now, Uganda's GDP is around 55 billion. We are right where they were in 1986. And we need to grow. If you look at our vision 2040, we need to grow our economy by 10 times by 2040. By then, we can get there. The path to get is very easy. Very, very easy. And I won't get into that. But what did Vietnam do? How did Vietnam achieve that? This is a history of Vietnam, an agrarian society. So is Uganda. Was emerging from devastating wars. So did Uganda. Had their major export as coffee. So is Uganda. Okay, number 4, let's debate that one. They had revolutionary leadership. How many of you saying, that doesn't apply to us? I'm going to tell you something. A man who can persuade 27 comrades, let's get guns, go in the bush, and fight. And in 5 years' time, overthrow the government. Whatever you want to call him, he's revolutionary enough for whatever you need. So we basically share the same thing. Look at number 5, gifted in natural resources. So if you look at, you could replace Vietnam's history with Uganda history, and there's no difference at all. Look at the reforms they did after the war. They liberalized the economy. So we did. They wanted to attract foreign direct investment, as we are trying to. They had deliberate policies on value addition and industrialization. So do we. And we had deliberate policy for export-led growth. Same policies, same history, same policies, but somehow they left us behind. What went wrong? As that comedian usually say. One of the things Vietnam did that we didn't do, Vietnam as a state didn't walk away from agriculture. If you remember, for us in the 1970s, many of you are too young to remember, the cooperatives were strong and they managed our agricultural resources, whether it was cotton, tea, coffee. These were strong because they offered a market for the farmer, and because they were strong enough, they could open up international markets. We liberalized our economy and handed the economy to you and me. Now, who am I? I am small, I am greedy, I'm selfish, uneducated, poor, you name it. And the whole economy was turned over to me. And the state took off his hands. The good news is, if you look at the NDP3 and NDP4, the government has gone back, and now they realize they need to intervene in the affairs of the economy, especially regarding markets. Our problem in the country, and I've argued this, is not production. No. People produce, But once they produce, they ask, where am I going to sell it? And we have no answer for them. And it demotivates anybody else who could put more money in agriculture for that purpose. And we're saying it cannot be. By the way, that's some intervention we're going to do in that case. Look at what they did. Secondly, this is where you laugh. They went and mobilized domestic long-term savings. All the countries that became Asian tigers, China, Taiwan, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, and now Vietnam, became Asian tigers when their domestic long-term savings hit around 27% of GDP. Why? It meant that they could fund some of their development agendas internally. They didn't have to beg 100%. In Uganda, we beg like, hey, my goodness me. When we, as a country, we took a stand against LGBT, now suddenly the World Bank said we're not giving you any more money. And people say, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to us? Well, we've survived, but that's because we're so dependent on the other people, and they're telling us the terms we need to do in terms of what to do. Vietnam did not know. If you look at this graph, it's a simple graph. The gray bars basically represent the GDP per capita of Vietnam. Look at 1989. Okay, 1985, this was right around $500 per capita. Look at their savings rate around that time. If you go the gray line, their domestic long-term debt to GDP was just around close to 10%. Then they began mobilizing. Right now, Vietnam's long-term savings to GDP is 35%. And look at their GDP per capita, it's close to 3,000. What's the GDP per capita for Uganda? Let me see if some of you know your economics. We are just, yes, Please give that guy a young, guy is aware. And sometimes, when you cross 1,000 line, you become low, middle income country. But Uganda goes in and out because sometimes we don't reach, sometimes we are 1,000 and we're under 1,000. So we keep on going like this until we get the time when we'll be stable. But think about that. That's our GDP is 1,000, just over 1,000. We are in the same place with these guys. Now, the danger of this is this, guys. Look at Uganda's long-term domestic capital. It's 11%. And all of that today is sitting on NSSF. It tells you, and for some of you who are still young, think of this. The next 10 years, what country do you want to live your country? A country full of begging? A country that we can invest in by savings so that we improve our long-term domestic savings. So when we have to do a karoma, we don't have to go to China and borrow the entire $2 billion. We can say, Nafe Tulinako, 500 M. Then you negotiate the terms. We want to do the road. You don't have, it drives your agenda in terms of things that we do. So part of what we do as now a fund that you own is this agenda. I have my daughter. My daughter is just 20 years old. So what future do I want to live for her in the next 20 years? Should it be a future full of beggars? Or can you do something about it? So you now look at that. Saving at that point goes even beyond just your personal ambitions, but has this national obligation, which still turns out to be something for your personal good. So there's a longer term view towards why savings are important. We're coming into the end of 2025, our vision next 10 years. So we've already come up with what we call Vision 2035, the next 10 years. What do we want to see this fund do the next 10 years? And I think the next 10 years are going to be very interesting. I'll just show you something. This is our purpose. Our purpose is to make lives better by making savings a way of life. All what Geoffrey talked about here, all those personal things, it always came back to, please save, 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 save. When you do, you have a chance of retiring with a much better quality of life than if you don't. That's our purpose. Okay? These are the things we'll do. 3 things. Maximize contributions from you. Maximize earnings as we invest that money. Maximize value to members so they do not have to exit. Now this last one is where there'll be a lot of beauty. Let me just give you an example. Maximize contribution, we can actually figure that. Actually, let me go to those slides. What do you mean by maximize contributions? We are saying we want to empower people to save more. There are two thrusts to that. Create a willingness to save, financial literacy, and then you look at what you get into a group, help them save in that case. For us also doing the same thing, bring the informal sector in. Maximize earnings, create a stream of alternative investments for sustainability, improve sustainable returns for members and benefits. I'm going to tell you a bit of two things we are doing in this area that typically a patient one doesn't do. About 4 years ago, and I have a number of examples from Bali, we rolled out a program called High Innovator. What we realized was the economy wasn't creating enough jobs. As you know, graduates come out of the university, the jobs are not there. So we said we cannot be bystanders. We need to be able to help create jobs. So we went into the ecosystem, and we find that globally the best jobs are created by small and growing businesses. The business you're running, those create jobs. But we found out in Uganda something very interesting. The small and growing businesses have already picked up bad manners. They don't want to comply. They don't want to file taxes. They don't want, they go to do all those things. So we went below to what we call early stage startups and help identify potential ideas, businesses that have the potential to grow, to become profitable over the next 20, 30 years. And over the last 4 years, we have funded 437 startups. They've actually created 30,000 jobs who have become our members, and they've contributed over 1.2 billion shillings, so it works. So we're going to expand that into 2030. And you know what you're thinking, but where are you guys? But we don't see you. Okay, you may not have seen me, but with the number of startups in Bali that we've actually funded. Now, it's possible you didn't see it, but if you keep abreast what you read in the papers, whatever, you're going to see it. And sometimes we read the paper and you think, it doesn't belong to me, and you skip it. But therein lies the thing. Try to read it. You'll find that actually there's a gem there. We are running this program over and over again. We are done with this cycle for June 2025. We are starting again in July. And want to fund 1,000 startups. 1,000. Now, it's very possible half will die. But that's okay. The other half that survive will be our bread and butter the next 10, 15 years. So we're looking for long term in terms of